So, welcome, friends. This is Saturday morning in Thailand, Friday afternoon or evening in the U.S. And today we're going to talk about, basically, we're going to talk about what was practiced in the time of the Buddha that was actually not then part of his teachings. And that the reason that we want to do that is because most Western Buddhists like to read, and they read and they read and they read. And when they read about the stuff that was happening in the time of the Buddha, that the Buddha himself tried out and found to be not functional, not liberating, then the Westerners will say, okay, me too. If the Buddha did it, I'm going to do it. Now, what that means is that if they would actually listen to what the Buddha taught, then they would go directly to the noble path. That direct is the actual word. It's the word itself is eta jnana mago, the direct pathway. And yet the Westerners have gotten involved in what is called ekagatha, which is concentrated or one-pointedness of mind. And now there was a lot of practices during the time of the Buddha that various religions, rishis, wanderers, sadhus, other guys were practicing these things, especially with the Jains, who were into various austerities. But some of the methods that they would use actually do help bringing on direct concentration. And in fact, they would use some of these techniques to get into various deep mental states that we can call jhana. Now, the first thing that we'll talk about would be kasina meditations. I'm sure that several of you have heard about the kasina. And basically, what kasina meditations are is kinds of visualization. They use a lot of the visual part of the brain for the kasinas. There were actually 10 in all. The ones that were practiced, let us say, to get started, would be what is called earth, water, fire, and air. Now, the air meditations wound up, people would just lay on their backs and look at the sky at night, see the stars, and you could say then that using kasina air meditations is what gave rise to astronomy, astrology, and meteorology. And so we can thank those guys for doing the old kasina meditations, but now modern scientists, they don't just lay on their back and look at the sky. They've got all kinds of equipment and telescopes and James Webbs and all of this kind of stuff. But this is where it got started. The earth meditations were generally done by taking a mud disc that was about a foot across, odd shapes, but mostly somewhere between a square and a circle. And that what they would do is just look at that square of mud and then close their eyes and then open their eyes again and then close their eyes. And as they would close their eyes, then they would try to visualize what was on that mud kasina, a mud disc. And then they would open their eyes to fill in the gaps so that they could, let us say, memorize things very well. Now, this actually brings up a quality, it's a skill that can be developed. And that skill that can be developed, we would call photographic memory. Now, some people have it naturally. In fact, nowadays, about the only people who do have it are those who probably didn't even know they were developing it when they were a kid. It's something like perfect pitch, that some people have really perfect pitch, but many of the musicians that I know could at least name a few notes, especially A, because we tuned on A. And so that note would get stuck in the mind. The same thing with these visual casinos is that, for instance, the stargazers, the air casino, would actually be able to memorize the sky so that they begin to see that it was moving. If they hadn't memorized it from what they were looking at last night, then how would they know that the thing was actually moving? And so this is because they didn't have any photographs, they didn't have any drawings, didn't have any paper to write on. So this is two of the casinos. The third casino would be what is called water. Now, one of the best places for getting information about the water meditation was done by Hermann Hesse, who wrote Siddhartha. How many of you have ever heard of that novel? At the end of the novel, Hermann Hesse had Siddhartha as what he called a ferryman, a boatman, and that he would just sit and look at the water, gaze into the water. This has been done. People, in fact, surfers, they watch the water. Is that not true, Scott? They get into that water
Yeah.
meditation, looking at the condition of the water, watching it move, etc., like that.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one is the one that's the most interesting, is what is called the fire meditation. Now, the fire meditation, or the kasina, fire kasina, means that they, in the old days, they would probably sit around a campfire, but then candles were invented, or oil lamps. In fact, they didn't have candles in the time of the Buddha, but they did have oil lamps where they would have the oil and the wick. Normally, the oil bowl was made out of mud, and so the mud bowl that you would have for the candle became part of the lore, because the mud of the candle holder would get saturated with oil, and yet even though the candle bowl was still oily, it didn't have enough oil to saturate the wick in order to make the flame. So while they were watching this flame, maybe just a little flame, one about this size here, the size of a candle flame, they would watch it, and then they would close their eyes and see that like the others that I've talked about, I haven't mentioned the word, but the word is nimitta, which means an image. Now, the candle meditation, it's very easy to get the image. All of you probably have the memory or the example of looking at a fluorescent bulb or a light, because you use those every evening, and then after you look at the light, you close your eyes or look away, that light is still there. Or if you look into the sun, for sure, if you look into the sun, it's going to actually burn a hole in your eye, and that then becomes the nimitta. So they were very big on nimittas during the time of the Buddha, but the Buddha's practice with that stuff, he saw that it had nothing to do with the questions that he was looking for the answers for. That these were just practices, and people would get all concentrated in everything, but they did not develop discernment. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But continue on. By the way, the kasina meditations, there's a very famous one that happened, a retreat, where many, at that time, famous meditation teachers gathered in Georgia for a 10-day kasina meditation retreat. In fact, I just posted a bit about that on Discord, where instead of them all sitting around the candle flame burning their eye out, they got into arguments about how to do it. This is Western Buddhism for you. They would rather get it right before they get any of it at all, as opposed to actual practice.
Right.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. A lot of people get involved in debating each other and quarreling about, no, this is what the Buddha said, and no, this is the real teaching, and no, this is more accurate. You misunderstand it. But if we look at what the Buddha teaches in the sutta, he teaches Dhamma, that when practice, you don't quarrel or fight with anybody.
Because
Because
it's easy to understand
yeah,
when
yeah,
practiced. If you only
yeah,
hear about it but don't practice it, then there's all kinds of hindrances and doubts and arguments and all kinds of things that come up.
right,
But when you practice what the Buddha taught, then you can see directly for yourself.
for yourself.
Ehipassiko, it says.
Right, and
Ehipassiko,
then
come and see for yourself. Come and practice directly what
yeah,
the Buddha taught. So, continuing on with the casinas, the next group of them, we've covered 4 so far. The next group of casinas is also in 4, and these are colored casinas. Now, one of the points that I'd like to make about the Pali language is that the word for green and the word for blue is the same word. Now, part of the reason for that is because the only real blue that you'll find in nature is of 2 places that I know of. One is that the sky is blue when it's not cloudy. The other place is duck poop. Ducks have a dark blue. In fact, the poo of the duck would be where they would get the pigment for dyeing clothes in the very early times, to have blue clothing. But the kasina would not have been blue, it was green. And yet all the translators use the word blue. There is no blue kasina, it's a green kasina. And the green actually comes from that one of the kasinas that they would do is they would take and stitch leaves of a tree together. And these leaves, then, as they watched it over several months' time, the leaves would turn from green to yellow to a reddish color. And so these reddish colors are actually old casinas, and a green casina would be a new one. But what they do is that they sit and they watch the leaves, noticing that the leaves themselves have veins and other things like that, so that they would memorize what that kasina looks like, concentrating the mind, focusing, narrowing down, looking deeply. The last 2 would be more advanced kasinas. One of them that they would have is the color white. Now, when they talk about the white color, what they're actually talking about is what happens to your eyes, like at night, when you close your eyes and still look. When you're looking at the eye, but the eye is closed, what do you see? What do you see, Alex, when you close your eyes and look through the eyes? What do you see? Do you see blackness with a lot of patchy little white things that are moving around, or sometimes they're stable, look like clouds or maybe stars? Maybe one of them will fire and you'll see a star pop up and other things like that. Have you ever practiced that?
Yeah.
All right, so you know what that is, but you also know that it's constantly changing. All right, that's one of the casinas. Another casino, surprisingly enough, would be consciousness, but your mind must be very, very still in order to, in fact, a better way of using it would not be consciousness arises, because the consciousness is already there in some form or another, but it changes. And so a thought will come up, or maybe a piece or a tiny little bit of a thought will come up, or maybe in noticing something will show up. Would be called the consciousness casino. But as I was saying, all of these things were practiced in the time of the Buddha, and the Buddha practiced them too and found that they were not liberating. Why? Because they were focusing down. They were closing down. They were, in fact, what you could call concentrating. So, before we finish with the kasina, does anybody have anything to say about them? Practices that you've done, questions that you have, something like that?
Yeah, just
Nobody?
being satisfied feels more relaxing overall. Casinas, it's like tensing up the body.
Pardon?
Just
Say again,
practicing
please.
satisfaction feels more relaxed overall. Like casinas, they tense up the body.
Yes, that's true. That's exactly right. Why? Because people who are practicing kasina meditations do so because they want something. That's a good observation. It's not necessarily relaxing. Santiago, do you have anything to say?
Nope. All is well.
All is well. Okay. If you have never done kasina meditations, congratulations. But go ahead,
Oh, I was just
Eddie.
laughing with you, but I have done a fire casino, the new version of fire casino, I guess you may say, which is the flashlight on the phone. You can use that to blind your eye or whatever you want, and use that as the nimitta. I thought I'd bring that up.
Okay, I guess the kids have something, a new toy to play with, to blind
I
Yep.
yourself with
like
your cell phone flashlight.
I enjoy gazing at fire. So not necessarily trying to close my eyes and have a magical experience, but just looking at fire and just watching it shift and dance around. It can be mesmerizing and yeah,
Yes, that's
you can
why
get
the
into
fire
just
meditation is so popular. That in fact, you can imagine this: that the kids are at camp and they're sitting around the campfire, and somebody's strumming on this guitar, and they're singing something like "Kumbaya." And while they're all sitting there gazing into the fire, they stop singing and start fire gazing.
mm,
So fire gazing is
yeah,
something that is done. It is mesmerizing, the snap, crackle, and pop of the things that happen in a fire.
yeah,
Or in a candle, they're dancing. But the light of a cell phone is pretty darn steady. It's hard to sit there and watch your battery go dead.
yeah.
So,
That wouldn't be fun.
all right. So let's move on then to other things that they practiced in the time of the Buddha, basically in conjunction with this. One of them would be the austerities, and the Buddha was really into the austerities. This is where we get the image of the starving Buddha. Actually, he wasn't a Buddha then. He was a bodhisattva, and he was starving himself with these austerities. Go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna ask you, so I know that the Hindus had their own form of breathing meditation. They had pranayama, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference? What would be the difference between pranayama and anapanasati?
Anapanasati, the whole point is to learn to control the mind a bit so that you actually can breathe in long and deep. But the point of those two things would be to experience and know the body with the intention of relaxing the body. To where often pranayama yoga is when they suck in their tummy, get really strange and that like that. So you could say that pranayama, especially pranayama yoga, winds up being a competition
Uh,
of who can do
Yeah.
it the most weird.
yeah.
And in fact, I think in the time of the
Yeah.
Buddha, there was a lot of spiritual competition, spiritual materialism going on.
Oh yeah.
The other thing that they had in the time of the Buddha, we could call now concentration meditations that actually fit in with the kasina, fits in with the pranayama breathing, and also fits in with what we know of the term jhana. That the Buddha, in fact, practiced jhana as far as they could go and found that that was not what he was looking for. Well, that's very interesting. If the Buddha said that he practiced the jhanas all the way up to the fourth jhana, all the way up to nothingness, all the way up to neither perception nor non-perception, and he found no value directly in that, why is it then that the Western people, the Western Buddhists, are lusting after jhana? Really strange, huh? Especially since they wind up being disappointed, they wind up wanting more and more and more, and they never get satisfied with it. And that a lot of them get that because they say, oh, well, I've heard that samatha meditation or calmness is part of the jhana, and we've already done what we call vipassana or dry meditation, and we're not getting anything out of that. And so all the many of the Vipassana people then want to go to try jhana so that they can get the other half. But both of these are then not what the Buddha taught at all. Then, in fact, the story is in Sutta number 36, where the Buddha says, tells the story of how he fell into a creek and couldn't get out. This is in his starving days when he starved himself to death, or nearly to death, becoming kind of a stick figure, where he recognized that he didn't have the strength to even get out of the creek that he was in. And so he grabbed a hold of some branches from a tree and eventually pulled himself out. And there, sitting under that tree, he started to muse, what have I been doing? Look at all the practices. And the stories go that he was the very best at every one of the practices. Whatever practice he had, he did it better than anybody else could. Now, that's an important point because everybody's wanting to get those kind of states, and the Buddha found them not to be useful. And while he was sitting under that tree, he remembered and mused that when he was a teenager, he was sitting under a rose apple tree, and under that rose apple tree, he came to practice the first jhana. And then he had the idea that, the first jhana is, in fact, the path that I'm looking for. And so he crawled himself out, and he took some food. The story is that from a cowherd maiden, he got rice milk. And the rice and the milk that he was taking got him pretty fat very quickly, especially since he was starving himself to death. And when he was getting really fat very quickly, his companions didn't like that at all. They thought that he had quit the practice completely, and so they left. So that left him alone, and this was in the area of Bodh Gaya. Now, Bodh Gaya actually was the home area of the Jains. This is where they lived, was in that eastern part of Bihar, in India, and so that's where he found himself. And this place now called Bodh Gaya was actually a swamp. It was a rubber swamp, and it was full of snakes, crocodiles, and bugs, and all kinds of stuff. But that's where he was when he got there, and so that's where he stayed, and he stayed there. They say the story is about 6 weeks. Now, in that 6-week period, he put together several things from what he already knew. An example of that was the Four Noble Truths actually comes from Ayurvedic medicine, to where you have a disease, you've got a cause of the disease, you have the cure for the disease, and then you have the potion or the medicine that cures that disease. He took those 4 things and turned it into the Four Noble Truths. He also took the 4 elements that we had from the kasina meditations: the earth, the water, the fire, and the air, and turned those from the outside of a real kasina, a real fire, a real sky watching, to the inside, so that he had the body, the feelings, the mind states, and the floating mental objects. So there's your earth, fire, water, and air. Much of the language that he used, he derived from the local languages, and if we understand how those words were used, you can see how the Buddha grabbed some of those words and made modifications to it. One of those words was Aryan. Another one was Brahman. That the Brahmins were born in a family or in a clan, and they were the priest. But he says, no, a real Brahmin is one who has a change of lineage in his mind and is no longer a Brahmin by birth, but he's Brahmin by his actions, his thoughts, his behavior. The same was the word for Aryan. Now, he was actually in the Aryan clan himself. The Sakyans were part of the Aryans, which would be considered in modern times the aristocrats, the nobles, the warriors. And so his family was of that clan, and he changed the word from Aryan in the sense of Aryan by birth into Aryan means your behavior, your thoughts, your presence. And so he talked about a change of lineage, to change from your birth lineage into a noble lineage of the mind. So he also, in that 6-week period, put together, in fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about this quite a lot because it's actually in the Udana, ancient literature, where the Buddha put together the Paticca Samuppada and came up with the concept of Idiapapajayata, that everything is caused from a causation, that everything that you see is the effect of some kind of cause, and that the entire universe is operated in this cause and effect, giving rise to the concept of anicca. Everything is in flux. Everything is constant. And so this became part of the root teachings that he gave, and he came up with this plan. And the plan is basically, if we want to use it in very few words, we can say it's the noble middle path, that everything goes to the middle, that these austerities that the Jains were practicing was one extreme, and these high jhanas that he was also practicing was just another extreme. But the first jhana, which is a happy, joyful, beautiful state where the mind is free from hindrances, is actually the middle path. And he also devised several methods for bringing about this middle path, which now has become known to be the first jhana. And so when people generally talk about jhanas in plural, they're actually referring to the very high jhanas, because there is a major distinction between the first jhana and the other jhanas, because the other jhanas have focus of concentration of the mind, to where the first jhana has to do with organization of the mind. So he actually then began to change the definition of the word samadhi from concentration into the word samadhi, which has to do with mental organization. That what we're doing is that we're focusing only enough to focus out the unwholesome, so that we keep the mind active, so that we can investigate, we can see, we can make discernments, but we're not stopping the mind. The kasina meditations and the higher jhanas were all used to stop the mind. Well, how are you going to learn anything that way? How are you going to be able to discern what's an unwholesome thought versus a wholesome thought if the mind is stuck in not much of anything at all? And in fact, I've just seen it recently, a joke on Discord, where the cop is pulling somebody over and saying, I see you driving under the influence of Janna, a DWJ, because you can't drive a car. Now, you can drive a car easily enough if you're in first jhana. Then, in fact, if you're in first jhana, that makes you a very excellent driver. Why? Because you're paying attention. You're not all thinking about driving. You're actually driving. You're actually focused and paying attention to what's real. We don't get sidetracked by the billboards or the ladies on the side of the road or anything like that. We're actually watching the road. Well, when we come out of the car and are sitting, what is first jhana then is when you're watching the road of the mind. You're watching the activities of the mind. You're seeing what's going on. You're paying attention. Wise reflection. Now, the wise reflection that the Buddha was interested in was being able to see when unwholesome thoughts, which can also be called hindrances, which can also be called dissatisfactions or dukkha. This is a whole group of stuff that's on that side of the fence of unhappiness. And we can change that by looking, by discerning. And so this is what the Eightfold Noble Path is really all about. And it's well expounded in Sutta number 117, when he talks about, firstly, what is right view. And he talks about right view in the frame of what is wrong view. Wrong view means that there are no spiritual people, no mothers and daddies, no rules, no laws. That you can do anything, you can get away with any activity, which means then that this is the point of view of a psychopath or a crook. Does somebody have something to say? I didn't see. Never mind. Okay. And then right ordinary view is from the parent's perspective of, oh, no, you can't get away with it. We're going to have priests. We're going to have police. We're going to have teachers. We're going to have people out there watching, so that if you do something, you can't get away with it. This is what brings in the Hindu version of the law of karma, is that you can't get away with it. Well, every smart kid knows they can get away with it. How many times did each one of you shoplift before you got caught? And then maybe after you got caught, because they were so lenient on you, they continued to shoplift, and you stole all kinds of things before you figured out that it was not a wise thing to do. Same thing with telling lies. We tell all kinds of lies and get away with it. We've been telling lies since we were kids. In fact, we learned how to lie from our parents. But they got away with it. So when the let's say the church ladies come in, they're saying, "Oh no, you can't get away with it. We're going to make a religion so that eventually you're going to go to hell for all the lying and the shoplifting that you've done." They try to make it kind of permanent. But the Buddha could see that we do not, in fact, know the outcome of our behavior, even bad behavior. That some are actually quite sharp at shoplifting. They can shoplift their whole life long and never get caught. All kinds of ways to, in fact, this is why Walmart has begun to put cameras. They've had cameras now for about 20 years. And yet, if they were really smart, they'd put a camera in every nook and corner of their entire place, because the shoplifters know to just put the stuff in the basket and then go to a place in the store where there's no cameras, and that's when they take it and put it in their pocket where the cameras can't see you. So there's all kinds of ways of getting away with it. Then, in fact, look at Donald Trump. He's a crook. He's a criminal. He's a proven criminal. He's a sexual abuser, and yet he's gotten away with it. Funny like that. So right noble view, or excuse me, right ordinary view doesn't work. You can't police the world. And yet look at how much the Christians or even the Islam, they try to police the world. They make all kinds of rules. No abortions, no LGBT, no being brown, all of that kind of stuff. And yet it happens anyway. They can't make rules or laws against it. But, see, being now, what then does it do? There is another way of looking. It's not a worldview, but it is, in fact, an observation. Looking to where I can get away with it is a worldview. You can't get away with it is a worldview. But look at what you're doing right now is not a worldview. It's actually discernment. It's actual observation. Now, one of the things about kasinas and jhanas and austerities and all of that kind of stuff that they practice that stuff in order for someday out in the future that they would get some results. This is all ordinary right view. To where if you're practicing discernment and you can see what's happening right now, then you can use right noble effort to come out of that right now. This is why the Buddha talks about it as the direct method. You can come out of your dukkha that you're having right now immediately just by changing your attitude, changing your mind. This is all built right into the Eightfold Noble Path. So this is actually the practice. And he gave the practice of Anapanasati. And one of the beautiful parts of Anapanasati Sutta that is not ever quite understood is that it's built. The Anapanasati Sutta itself is built around bringing someone into the first jhana, because it's got all the qualities of that. To gladden the mind and to see the mind, investigate the mind, and gladden the mind, which is normally referred to as step 9 and 10, will help you to remove the unwholesome thoughts so that you can unify the mind and then liberate the mind. The same thing is true with the feelings. Is that instead of having the feelings of dukkha, of dissatisfaction, we cultivate the feeling of sukha. We cultivate being safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. And then we practice that on until we develop the sammasankappa, which means that we're changing our attitude from the attitude of a loser to the attitude of a winner, which can be said something like, aha, I've got this. That aha feeling is actually the piti. It's sharp, It's focused. It's but it doesn't last long. But it is actually part of the jhana to have that feeling of, wow, this is so great. This is great. This is wonderful. And you can talk yourself into that state anytime that you want to. So, with the body relaxed, with the feeling of piti sukha, with the mind in a state of satisfaction, with the mind in a state of happy nobility, and that the mind is free from the hindrances, that's the first jhana. And all of that is spelled out directly with both the Eightfold Noble Path and the Anapanasati Sutta, especially in line with the Anapanasati Sutta, has to do with the four foundations of mindfulness. You get the body relaxed, you get your feelings relaxed, you get your mind states relaxed, and you get your mind's objects and all your thoughts into a relaxed state. This is the first jhana. And it is so different from the other jhanas that I'm surprised that they didn't have a different kind of word for the first jhana, but that's what they call it. So the whole teaching of the Buddha has to do with getting into this middle state, not into the high jhanas and not into the austerities of flagellating or tudong or any of those austerity kinds of things, like, for instance, modern yoga. Look how hard they work and try to stretch their bodies into strange shapes. And it's painful. It's hard to do. And then they get all egoistic about it because it's hard to do, but it's not liberating. It's painful. I'm talking about modern hatha yoga as opposed to the other kinds of yogas. By the way, the word yoga actually just means an activity or a duty. You can see it as, in fact, a word that comes to our English word as yoke, where you yoke an oxen to pull a cart. And so we have these yokes that we put on to try to make ourselves better. Scott's the sportsman here. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Putting on yokes. How about those sandbags that they put on their wrist and feet? Or how about those dragging something through the water for the swimmers to give them extra strength?
Sometimes they put on a little parachute
Yeah.
when they're swimming.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So so the whole practice is to make it hard because you're going to get some benefit out of making it hard. But the Buddhist teaching is, no, we're going to make it really dead easy. We're going to take all of the extra weights off. So this is where we come to the knowledge of deliverance, because the knowledge is to see that all of that baggage is heavy. We're going to stop with all of this yoga stuff and start just being okay. That's the real teachings of the Buddha, that he actually did find a way of getting rid of dukkha. That in fact he said both formerly and now, I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha and the end of dukkha, or dukkha nirodha. He said that phrase in many, many different suttas. It's in Dinga Nikaya, it's in the Samyutta Nikaya number 22, it's in the Majjhima Nikaya number 22. Many places he has said that he only teaches one thing, and that is seeing the dukkha and then getting out of the way. Now, one of the things that the Western Buddhists have stumbled onto is the word arahat. Now, the word arahat originally meant someone who is worthy of gifts, worthy of honor, worthy because they have gotten their mind cleaned out. But the Westerners have turned that from the sense of worthiness into a sense of perfection, that they never have another unwholesome thought. They never have any activities. And yet there are many suttas where the Buddha talks about conversations with Mara. With his action always, as soon as that unwholesome thought comes up, he says, aha, I see you, Mara. And that's basic practice. That's the first thing that we do, is we begin to look at what the mind is doing, and when we see something unwholesome, we throw it out. That's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and also good in the end. You're not going to come to a state to where you've got no more unwholesome thoughts, because that would be too relaxed. But rather, we are relaxed, but we're still alert. We're still on a vigil. We can still see. And as soon as an unwholesome thought comes up, what do? We change it right then and there. The Buddha's model is a change model, but it's actually quite easy to do. But it's only easy with two qualities. Actually, there's several qualities. One is that you've got to have confidence or faith or respect for the path. And number two, you've got to know the path. And number three, you've got to practice the path. But look at all the side things that we can do instead, like kasina, or concentration meditations, or self-flagellation and tudanga and hard work. And these are the things that all the religions are dealing with, to where the actual teachings of the Buddha is easy. There's no argument to it. All you have to do is just look at what you're thinking and make a change. Look at your attitude and make a change. Look at the way that you feel and make a change. Look at what the body is all stressed out and make a change. That's all there is to it. It's a change model. So, now that we've come to this state, does anybody have anything to say? Ivan, what do you think, huh?
I'm trying to remember, because I remember I had something to say. I can't recall it. Maybe that was the one.
Struggle. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's amazing how easy it is to change the mind. People, I think people are told so often that change, it takes a lot of time and effort, and it's change doesn't happen overnight. But the 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 energizing thing about the Dhamma is that it's immediately effective. Um, so you don't have to wait 10 years of meditating before you get the benefit from it. You can have a benefit right now. You just got to change your mind. And it's so beautifully simple. You just, the way we don't suffer because of what happens, we suffer because of how we react to what happens, how we view what happens. It's all mind made.
There's a little phrase in Pali that the monks memorize. I've kind of forgotten it, but it starts off with Sawakato, Arahanto, Ehipasiko, Opanaiko. All of those things have to do with practicing right now and getting the benefits right now. This is what the Buddha taught. And the more you practice, the better the skill of discernment. The more you practice, the better the skill of sati, of remembering to look. So if we forget to look, or if we don't have any discernment when we do look, then our change means very little. But if we can develop the skill of looking, if we can develop the skill of remembering to look, and develop the skill of actually making the change, then that's the real path of the Buddha. There is no magic to it. It's all practice, 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 practice. And every time that you are practicing, you get the benefit of that practice right then and there, as well as the residual development of developing skills so that you can do those three things better. So, Christina, what do you think? Where are you, Christina? How about you, Eddie? What do you think?
I think it's good stuff. Moment by moment, I'm here practicing. Thanks for the reminder.
Yes. How about you, Potato?
I'm doing a satisfaction kasina.
That's
I
a
didn't.
good one.
I didn't catch that. Say it again.
Doing a satisfaction kasina.
Yeah, satisfaction casino. That's right. Keep satisfaction going. So, Navid, do you have anything to say?
No, I thank you. It's a very good reminder of the middle path, and I'm going to start reading a little bit more. But
No,
gladdening the mind.
that's what you do. You don't read more. The only book you need is the book between your ears. It's one of my favorite Buddhist
You've
jokes.
you've told me that many times.
Yeah, the practice itself is so simple that we only need just a couple of suttas.
Yeah.
We only need just a couple of sutras. If you're going to teach the Dhamma, you need to know a few more, but we don't need to remember them all. We only need to remember one or two, and that would be the Eightfold Noble Path. That one's number 117, and how to practice
Mhm.
number 118, practicing number 10, and that's all there is to it. With a few sutras, it's got some other stuff, but you don't really need the sutras now. You already know how to practice. Never
Mm.
mind, start again. Clean the mind out. Have fun. Don't worry. Be happy.
There's nothing to worry about. There really isn't anything worth worrying about. We're all gonna die anyways.
Not a
Just enjoy
worry in the
the
world.
yeah.
So, Santiago, what do you think?
Ah, it's great. I I remember about Devadatta, how he made the Buddha. He tried to force the Buddha to increase the austerities and make them
Yeah.
mandatory. But
Mm-hmm.
then the Buddha said, no, it should be voluntary. Only those who want to do it should do it. And then Devadatta tried to kill the Buddha for it and take control of the Sangha. So
Right,
it's like,
because he was an ordinary man who really wanted things to. He wanted to be the king of the mountain. He was the
yeah.
cousin of the Buddha, by the way, and so that kind of gave him the idea that he could take over.
And so, like, Devadatta's downfall was not focusing on cleaning out his mind first.
Right, he was
And
interested
because
in taking over. He was a modern day Vladimir Putin.
yeah. And so that's like some of the problems you end up seeing with practices today is like 100th jhana, 1000th jhana, or like militant retreats or waiting for God to beam down some insight. The Buddha said that his teaching has no secrets.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
not underground, is it?
I'm very happy with it.
So, Alex, what do you have to say?
Not a whole lot. I enjoyed this call. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dhammarato.
Yeah, aren't these calls great? I really
They're
enjoy them.
wonderful. Yeah.
I really appreciate everyone coming here on these calls. I appreciate the Sangha and everyone practicing together and supporting each other. Just makes me feel really good to see all you guys here keep coming back and practicing the Dhamma. Because this stuff really works, man. This stuff is life changing, It changes your whole view of life, What was used to be hell becomes heaven because you change the way you look at it.
Yep.
Very nice.
Heaven, it's kind of warm in here, but I can handle that. So, Joe, what do you think? Welcome, friend. Glad to have you on board.
Yeah.
What do you think about what we talked about today?
Pretty good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was at work before when the call started. My question is, what differentiates the jhanas that Buddha learned from Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, the seventh and eighth jhanas? He supposedly learned those before he sat
And
under the.
there's 4. The sutras are very specific and clear about there are 4 jhanas. Basically, your question would be, when you're in the 4th jhana, what do you do with it?
I always thought the seventh and eighth were aspects of the fourth,
Well,
like 5, 6, 7, and 8.
why put numbers on them that don't exist?
So you're saying these states, like the realm of nothingness and the realm of neither perception or non-perception, don't exist, or?
No, number 7 and number 8 don't exist.
So why do they talk about them in the suttas? Why does Sariputta
They
go
don't
through?
talk about them that way in the sutras. They don't label them as 7 and 8. That's something that Lee Brassington and a few people have done.
Well, they talk about the realm of nothingness and the realm of neither perception nor non-perception, the realm of infinite space, infinite
But
consciousness.
those are not hard to do. By making them very high, they make them hard to do.
Right, but what differentiates those? Because he supposedly learned those practices from Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta before. So I'm just curious as to like what differentiates those practices from the ones that he talked about with the same names in the suttas.
Well, obviously, in and of themselves and on their own, they are not liberating.
Okay.
That's the
So
number one thing to remember is that those states without discernment, it's like being on Times Square in New York City looking for New York. That the 4th jhana is not that hard to do, but what it is hard to do is to be able to get into it, to see what it is and maintain it without actually having the 1st jhana. The 1st jhana is all of the time and activity. I wouldn't call it work. The work is not doing the 1st jhana. It's not getting into the 1st jhana. But once you're into the 1st jhana, we have to sustain that, which means to keep throwing the unwholesome thoughts out and keep throwing the unwholesome thoughts out. And with discernment, you begin to see that almost every thought you have is unwholesome, so you throw that out too. And there you are in the 2nd jhana, because you're a happy dude. You're just not thinking about much of anything. Okay? Think of the jhanas as actually extensions of the 1st jhana once you develop it as a skill. And I understand your frame of reference is that you want to go to the bottom line. You want to take the profits out of the company before you've ever produced anything.
So are you saying the Anapanasati Sutta is only teaching the 1st jhana?
Only the 1st jhana.
Okay.
And that all of those other jhanas are greed on the part of the Western practitioner.
So
If
when
got
you
the 1st jhana, you're satisfied, which means that you can relax. And when you get even more relaxed because you've been practicing the 1st jhana, you will naturally slide into those deeper relaxed states. But wanting it, not a chance. Why? Because wanting it, greed, wanting things you don't have, that's dukkha. We have to get out of the dukkha first. That's why I would recommend stay with 1st jhana. Then, in fact, if you get good at 1st jhana, you don't need anything other than that. But if you don't have 1st jhana because you want 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and your questions and all of that are about it, the answer to that is the only way to get into the 1st jhana is not by reading about it, but by practicing it. The only way you're going to be able to get into any of the other jhanas is by becoming skilled in the 1st jhana. So you're making, by even asking those questions, you're making that primary mistake that I mentioned, that one of your teacher's teachers had made. That it's not about future. It's about right now.
Akaliko.
Right now, can you enjoy what you're doing? Right now, can you be relaxed? How relaxed is not the issue. It's the point that can you relax right now? That's the real teaching of the Buddha. That remember, he practiced all of those things and didn't get the value that he was looking for out of them. So you can become skilled in the fourth jhana and you're still an ordinary dude full of greed, ill will, dukkha. They're not the path of the Buddha. They're just not. They're the results of the path of the Buddha. An example of that also would be metta. I have seen people practicing metta. In fact, they practiced metta in the time of the Buddha. But that the Buddha did not practice metta. Metta is the result of correct practice.
Is it possible to
Trying
do
to practice
insight?
a result doesn't work. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Is it possible to do insight meditation or vipassana while you're in the jhana, or do you have to get out of the jhana to do that, or did he not teach?
One thing to
Buddha
think
did
about is
not
that the Buddha
teach.
said that anapanasati is samatha vipassana. There's no difference.
Mm, right. Okay. Yeah. I
So they
know.
come
I know
together.
that.
It's
I've
two
heard that.
wings. Do you get what I'm saying? So there's no
Oh
need
yeah.
to
I
worry
know.
about things. Samatha stopping, vipassana seeing. So if you stop, you see. If you see, then you stop. It goes together.
And the Buddha
I'm
never
aware. I'm
gave a
aware. I'm aware.
meditation called Vipassana meditation.
Right.
That's made
Right.
up by these Westerners.
Right.
It's not canon. It was added
But
in.
are you able to see the three characteristics while you're in jhana, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, when you're in jhana, the mind.
Oops. Oh, he's back.
Oh, Discord just went out. Yeah, the mind is clearer than ever before because there's no hindrances. So you can really start to see things for what they really are, things as they actually are.
Somebody
So
just
it,
posted, I don't need to do the first jhana. Who said that? I was just joking. Okay.
It's sheep.
so is the thinking mind active still? I know the thinking mind is still active in the first jhana, but in the second jhana, like the thoughts are still there, or are they just residing in the background?
No discursive thoughts. There's still
I'd
cognition
say
and
they're more
perception.
unfinished. I would say that the thoughts are more unfinished than in the background. But in
Proto
fact, the
thoughts.
whole quality of discernment in the first jhana is stop having a stupid background. There is no such thing as a background. It's just not looking. The same thing with subconscious. The reason they call it subconscious is because you're not looking. When you're looking, there is nothing. There it is, and you're doing it, and you can see it. It's not in the background. It's right then and there. So let's say that you had it like this: that you had 9 thoughts in a row of A, and then you had one thought of B, and then you had another 9 thoughts of A, and then you had one thought of B. Many people will say that B thought is the background. No, it's not. When you're having that thought, there it is. Can you see it? There's no such thing as a background. There's no such thing as a subconscious. All there is the situation of not looking at what we're doing.
Dhammarato is
Wanting.
also. Oh, sorry, bro.
Go ahead, Ivan.
Yeah, I noticed Buddha in many various sutta he praised jhana, but he never. I mean, sometimes he does, but very rarely he praise like fourth jhana or something. He usually seems to allude to first jhana.
Yes. He talks about it like that. I see you, Mara, would mean then that the Buddha would be in that first jhana. The second, third, and fourth jhanas are absolutely meaningless, except that when one is in a more calm state, then we can see things in that calm state that you couldn't see when you were in a more agitated state. So you've got the ordinary mind is completely agitated, and then you've got first jhana, which is about 90% of the agitation is gone and only 10% agitation. And that's enough for you to see. But there is more that can be done, but it's not needed for liberation. What's needed for liberation is to be able to see the stuff as it's coming up. One can be completely liberated and completely happy and never touch the state of neither perception nor non-perception. That in fact, for everyone, that's just a label. But if you can get still enough, you can see that state of perception versus non-perception, like I started to talk about with the oil lamp, that oil, there's not enough there to light the fire, but there is enough oil left for you to detect that there is oil in that clay. So too, it's also possible for you to see that you have stopped making shit up called perception or namarupa, but there is still the tendency to make shit up. Okay. I see you guys are laughing.
Oh, just having fun listening, Dhammarato. I like it.
So that's what neither perception or non-perception is that you still have the tendency to make shit up, but you're not doing it. Well, you've got to get in the state of beginning to stop making shit up. Okay. Now, one of the qualities of the first jhana is that, yeah, we continue to make shit up, but we know that we're doing it. And then we change that shit to something that's less shit, but it's just still a thought. It's a wholesome thought, but a wholesome thought is still a pile of shit. Why? Because as soon as you have that thought and now you've gone to another, that old thought's dead and stinky. So all thoughts are temporary. All thoughts turn to shit immediately. Can you begin to see that? You could say, in fact, that's the third jhana. The third jhana is when you begin to see that every thought that you have is just, you're not having any thoughts, but it still stinks. There's the aroma that is still left. But I'll come back to this, Joe. You have been trained in Western Buddhism. You have been trained to try to go places that you have no chance of getting to. So let's start to practice on getting the stuff that you can do. Let's get the mind.
I mean, I was actually ordained in the Thai forest tradition originally, and it's been a progressive learning of other schools, and I'm well acquainted with the system that you teach. It's just there's so many voices saying this is the right way to practice, that's the right way to practice. So I've dabbled in so many different styles, so many different schools. So it's coming back to Thai forest again and again, but I'm well acquainted with everything that you're teaching, and the whole shamatha vipassana is one side of the same coin, or two sides of the same coin.
I hear the word associated, or what did the word acquainted? We're not looking for people who are acquainted. We're looking for people who are practicing.
Oh yeah.
Practicing, changing that mind from an unwholesome state to a wholesome state. This is what the practice is all about. Is the practice is change. It's a change model. It's not an acquaintance with 20,000 different bad practices, and one practice within that group it might be good. Is to be able to, with discernment, recognize that you can change and start to make those changes over and over and over again. It's a practice model. It's a change model. It's not an
Right.
acquaintance model.
Well, for me, it's just been like figuring out, you know,
There's nothing to figure out. That's another mistake. It's not figuring it out. And I've had a lot of students who keep asking questions and still wanting to know. And while they're asking those questions and trying to figure it out, they're not practicing. The only way to see the result of practice is by practicing and gaining that result. Is that not right, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Is that
agree
not
too.
right, Ivan?
Yeah. Yeah,
Pra-
it's so funny. Yeah.
practice is I don't consider it even practice. I consider it playing. It's like you're just having fun. Practice. You don't have to discipline yourself. Just have fun. Practice having fun and lighten up, and change your mind. We get so wrapped up in our deep dark dukkha, we don't realize that we can snap out of it just like that, as long as we wake up and remember to. It doesn't have to be sitting for an hour every day. It's meditation is look at what you're doing right now immediately, and make a change to the wholesome, and then keep
Scott,
staying. It's like walking on a tightrope. But
Scott, let me actually, tightrope walking is a good example. But the example that I use, and let me fill in the gaps there a little bit. You kind of made a leap. Let me say
okay.
that there are 3 P's. The first P is practice, the second P is performance, and the third P is play. Now, if you're playing the piano, if you're practicing the piano, you can actually practice the scales and enjoy practicing the scales. The one thing about piano practice that I was not given when I was a student in high school was the teachers who were teaching piano did not play the piano; they practiced and performed the piano. That we need to learn to enjoy what we're doing, to play with it. And so Scott is absolutely correct. It's, but we use the word practice to get people started. But once you practice one time saying, aha, I see you, Mara, and I don't have to deal with those kind of thoughts, I can have fun instead, that's when you make the change. You can make that change from practice to play the first hour that you practice. And now you're playing with it. You just start to play with the mind. You want, aha, I see you. Aha, I'm catching you. Aha, I'm having fun here. Every unwholesome, aha, I see you again. This is the practice that the Buddha taught, is watching the mind, but not taking it seriously. Because it's always changing anyway. There's nothing much to it. It's like a cat and a mouse game. Become that cat and play with that mouse. Have fun with it. All right, so I think that we've had enough for today. We'll do some more later. Anybody got any last words?
Thank you, everybody.
Alex, do you have one final playful note to play?
Yeah, just thank you, everybody. Had a really good time. Enjoy everybody's company whenever we show
Uh,
up. Thank you.
All right. So, Mikey, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, friends, for being here. It's such a joy to be a part of these Dhamma calls and be with Sangha. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, come join us. you can find a link in the YouTube description to join the Dhamma Friends Discord. And we've been doing quite a few calls here. Lately, we've just been putting up the calls with Dhammarato, but we've been seeing Sangha calls here just about every day. So we welcome you to participate in those. And if you don't have anything to add, that's fine too. You can just come listen and enjoy the Dhamma. So yeah, come make new friends. We'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Take it easy. Thank you, friend. See you later. Bye-bye.
Dhammarato.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye, Dhammarato. Good seeing you, sir.
I have a little bit question. Is that okay?
Thank
you. Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, Chi?
Yeah. So I never heard it before. It's like so, like good enough is also like playing, right? Like we playing is also. It's like it's about being good enough instead of putting too much expectation. Take it too seriously, right? So we just like I have been practicing, so I can play with what I learn, right? Like it's like that's why some people say it's like to play with unwholesome thought, like whack a mole, something like that. Is that true? Like is that what play is?
Dhammarato, you're muted. Dhammarato.
Oh.
Mikey.
You're muted,
Mikey.
Dhammarato. You're muted.
You gotta unmute yourself.
On Discord, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, all right. Okay, sheep, yes. Learn to play with that unwholesome thought. Aha, I see you, Mara. Read some of those suttas, in fact, where the Buddha is talking about it, that he's just bopping along. In one place, he's laying in bed, just enjoying himself, and that thought comes up, well, why don't you get up and do something? And his answer is, aha, I see you, Mara, and I'm just going to lay here and enjoy the evening. So have that skill of not taking yourself seriously at all. Begin to play with it. When I say practice, what I'm saying is practice the way that a football player would practice, or even the way that a 4-year-old would practice. That his daddy is throwing balls at him and he's missing them. But if his daddy is yelling at him for missing the ball, he's not going to learn to play. But if he that 4-year-old daddy throws an underhanded ball and the kid misses it and then catches it, his daddy's going to say, "Yay, you got that one! Yay, you got that one!" And then he throws one and the kid gets hit in the chest, and daddy laughs and says, "Oh, you missed that one. Never mind. Here's another one." So learn to play. It's very playful.
Can I use can I use Buddha Dhamma or like everyday life, like study, family? I think you also say that it's. I think how you can apply Buddha Dhamma on anything, right? Like so far.
Because it's always right now. You always have right now to practice. You don't have to go sit in the corner or sit in some meditation hall to practice. You can practice to be playful when your mom's yelling at you.
Yeah.
Aha,
Okay.
I see you, Myra, inside my head. Mom yells at me, and so I yell at me. No, I see that. So you can let mom yell, and I'm okay. Never mind. Everything is wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I'm using Buddha Dhamma on designing my stuff right now. So yeah.
You keep playing. You keep practicing. You
Yeah.
keep doing that. You'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dhammarato.
All right. We'll see you later.
Okay.
Okay, Mikey, you can turn it off.